Hi, my name is Kathleen Jasper, and I'm with Edge Academic Solutions, and I'm here to help you get the concordance score of a 19 on the ACT so that you can get your standard diploma from high school. Okay, so let's just get right into it. There are 4 types of passages on this test, and you're going to have to figure out through practice and understanding which of those 4 passages you are good at and which of those 4 passages you are not so good at. And you're actually going to take on a strategy where you're going to read the passages that you're better at first and save that passage that you're not so good at till the very end. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. So let's take a look at the different types of passages. All ACT tests are the same. Passage 1 is always going to be some sort of literary narrative or prose. You can see here that this one was written in 2008, and it is a literary narrative from a novel called A Map of Home by Randa Jarrar. It doesn't really matter who wrote this or what's going on here, but what does matter is this date right here, 2008. You can see that this is a story written relatively recent, which may be easier for you to read if you're good at reading stories. Sometimes this date right here will say 1848, and then you know that that is some old English crazy passage that you may or may not be good at reading. So take a look at that and take note of what's going on in the first part of each passage right here. So this one we have a literary narrative written in 2008. Okay. The next passage is going to be a social science passage, typically something in history or a historical figure. You can see that this social science passage actually has 2 passages. You have passage A and passage B. And then, of course, you have questions regarding passage A, passage B, and then both passages. Now, if double passages like this are not your strong suit, you may want to save this to be your last read of the test. But we'll talk a little bit more about that, and we'll also talk more about how you can strategize to answer these double passages more effectively and efficiently. The third type of passage is going to be a humanities passage. It can take two different forms on the ACT. First form is the humanities passage will be very much like a prose or a literary text, just like passage 1. It is pretty nuanced in the humanities passage. It's going to be, you're going to have to do a lot of inference and kind of figure out what the author is talking about without the author really coming out and saying what he or she is talking about. So you're going to have to decide how good are you at reading these humanities type texts. And the more you practice, the more you'll understand these different texts, and you'll be able to say, okay, this isn't my strong suit, or actually the humanities test is my strong suit. And then finally, and always number 4 on the ACT is going to be your natural science text or passage. And in this, you can see that this was written in 2009. It's relatively new, and it's going to be talking about humans and the planet. And this one looks like it must be Earth space, because they're talking about, you can see over here, launched from Cape Canaveral. So this is probably going to be some sort of space exploration. Some people are really good at reading the natural science text because there is no inference. There's just facts and information, and some people are just better at that type of reading. Some people aren't. Some people don't like this kind of reading because there's a lot of big words and a lot of scientific language, and it throws people off. So you're going to have to determine, again, is this a type of passage that you are strong at, or if this is one of your weaknesses, okay? So once you start to understand how you read this ACT. And again, you can't figure that out unless you read a lot of ACTs. So you're going to have to practice. And I'm going to tell you at the end of this where you can get lots and lots of ACT practice, because there's tons of practice out there. Once you decide, you know, how you're going to read this text, whether your literary narratives are the best ones or your science, your natural science is the best passage for you, then you're going to order your passages, and you're going to decide which 3 you are going to read fully and which one passage you are going to just skim and guess. And the reason why we do this is because it's a really awesome strategy. instead of reading all 4 passages with the same amount of time, which would be 8.5 minutes per passage, you're actually going to give yourself between 10 and 11 minutes per passage of the 3 that you are definitely going to read. The 4th passage, you're going to give yourself 2 to 5 minutes. You're going to skim and you're going to select a letter that you're going to guess with, and you're going to guess that letter all the way down the scantron. So if you're an A guesser or a B guesser or a C guesser, whichever one you feel best about, or a D guesser, you're going to take that letter and you're going to guess all of the way down on that last passage of any type of questions that you didn't get a chance to answer. Okay, so what we want is for you to be very, very accurate on the first 3 and hope for the best on the last one, where you would get maybe 1 or 2 and then had to guess on the rest. The reason why we do this is because on the ACT reading, if you can bank points in the beginning, it's actually better overall. And for you, if you are just trying to get a concordant score of a 19, you only need 50% of these questions correct. So let me say that again. To get the concordant score of a 19, you only have to get roughly 50% right on this test. So that's an F. You can fail this test and still get the 19. And I say that to people only because it takes some of the pressure off. So if you can reach between a 50 and a 60, somewhere in there, you're safe. You're going to reach that concordant score of a 19. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a look at these passages and figure out which ones you would be, better at than others. So for me personally, I'm probably going to do best on the narrative. I'm pretty good at reading stories, especially newer stories, and this one was written in 2008, so I'm definitely going to read this one first. The social science passage, I'm going to read this one second. I'm going to skip the humanities because this one is always very nuanced for me. I'm going to save this one till the end. And I'm going to read passage 4 third. I'm going to read this as my number 3 passage. And then I'm going to go back to passage 3 and read the humanities last. I'm going to skim this right here. I'm going to go through the questions as quickly as I can, and I'm going to answer that. Okay, so I'm going to go, my order is going to be 1, 2, 4, and 3. Now, you just pick what order works best for you, and then you decide on that. Now, on test day, you're going to have to do that fairly quickly. And if you practice this process, you'll be able to pick very, very quickly. I typically go 1, 2, 4, and 3 when I read the ACT. But let's say number 3 doesn't look so hard this time around, or maybe I'm better at number 2 or number 4. Whatever it is, you decide quickly. So if I got this ACT test in front of me, the first thing I'm going to do is look at my literary narrative. Okay, right here, 2008. I know definitely I can do that. I can do that within 10 or 11 minutes. Going down, okay, I've got a double passage. I'm actually pretty good at double passages, so I'm going to read that second. Third, humanities, it looks kind of wordy and nuanced. Oh, it's talking about Homer. I don't really like Homer that much. I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to go to number 7, natural science. Okay, they're talking about Earth, space. I think I can do that pretty well. And then I'm going to go back to my humanities and answer that one last. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about how you're going to attack the passage. First things first, read your questions first. So you're going to go through here and you're going to have the paper in front of you and you're going to read question 1, the point of view from which the passage is told. So point of view is going to be one of the things that we do. We're going to underline point of view or highlight point of view really quick. Number 2, the narrator mentions a piece of lint. Piece of lint is going to be a key word here. Keywords that I can pick out pretty quickly. Underline piece of lint. Think about it while I'm reading. Based on the passage, Mama's reaction to learning the name Baba gave the baby blah, blah, blah here. Okay, I'm going to underline Baba there and say, okay, this is really important. Lines 54 to 68. Okay, I'm going to go back into the text and figure out what that means there. Mama didn't go to the office of the City of Boston clerk based on the fact that, okay, City of Boston clerk. I'm going to keep a lookout for that when I'm reading. In line 78, the phrase, these stories. Okay, these stories most nearly refers. Okay, keep a lookout for that. According to the passage, which of the following Emotions do Baba and Mama share? Okay, emotions. Let's think about what they're feeling in the story. Number 8, of the following characters, which does the narrator describe as the most superstitious? Okay, superstitious, that's a good word. I'm going to keep a lookout on that. Number 9, the narrator most strongly suggests that Mama does which of the following? Strongly suggest means I'm going to have to infer. So keep my eyes on the lookout for something about telling stories here, as you can see here. And then finally, the passage the narrator makes. In the passage, the narrator makes which of the following distinctions? Okay, that one looks like it might be pretty heavy duty. All right, so I've read through my 10 questions quickly. Of course, I'm taking a little bit more time than you would. You would read a little bit quicker than I just did there, but I wanted to explain. And then I'm going to jump right back up into my literary narrative. I'm going to read this passage now. I have the questions in my mind. I have the passage in front of me, and I'm going to mark the text and decide what is important and star things and underline things so that I know what I'm talking about here. Okay? So as I read through the text, I'm going to underline, look at things. I got name of a child here. I know that there's going to be a lot of information here. Once I read and underline, then I'm going to go into my questions and answer them. By the time you have read the questions and you have underlined in the top of this text here, you should be able to get 3 or 4 of these questions right away without having to really look or double check. And then, of course, you are going to have to go back into the passage with lines 54 to 68, things like that over here in number 4, you're going to have to do. Okay, so the same thing goes for the next passage. The next passage is going to be my social science, and this one is a double passage. So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to read this separately. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to my questions here, and I'm going to look right here about passage A. Do you see how they break them up here? Passage A, passage B, and then both passages. Here's how I'm going to be strategic in reading this passage. I'm only going to read the questions about passage A, 11, 12, and 13 first. Then I'm going to jump up into my passage and read passage A, doing it just the way I did in the first ACT passage. I'm going to underline, I'm going to look for keywords, and I'm going to find ways to get me to the answer to those 3 questions here. And then I'm going to stop. I'm not going to go on and read passage B. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go read the questions for passage B after I've already answered and read for passage A. Then I'm going to read my questions for passage B. I'm going to go back up and read passage B and then come back down here and answer only the questions for passage B. Now, I've read both passages at the end of this and answered both questions. Now I can take a look at questions 18 through 20. There's 3 questions here that I will answer for the whole entire passage. Okay, so let's review that again. When faced with a double passage like this one here, I am going to go straight to the questions, read only the questions for passage A, 11, 12, and 13. Then I'm going to jump back into the passage and read passage A only. Then I'm going to answer passage A's questions only, 11 to 13. Then when I'm done with that, I'm going to read the questions for passage B only. Then I'm going to jump up into my passage and read only passage B, and then go back into the questions and answer the questions for passage B. And then finally, I will go over here and start my questions 18, 19, and 20, which I will most likely have to go back in the passage to understand a little bit better. Okay, so that's how you attack a double passage. And then for the other 2, remember, I'm going to skip humanities till the end because I don't love the humanities passage. I've never done that great on them. So I'm going to go straight to my natural science. This is going to be great for keywords and things like that. We're going to go into my questions, read them all here, go through, underline such exotica. Okay, that looks like I might be able to pick that out. 18 to 30. Then we've got Doppler technique. All right, I'm going to keep a lookout for Doppler technique. I've got planet using Kepler method. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a look at when was the passage written, okay, which of the following is the capability of Kepler, keeping that in mind. Danube and Vega, those sound like stars. I'm going to make sure I keep a lookout for those. And according to the passage, what do scientists expect to determine? This is going to be, again, at the very end of the passage, the very last question is always going to be one of those harder questions. This looks like it's going to be an inference question. All right, now that I have an understanding of my questions, I'm going to go back into my science passage and read it and underline and mark the text and circle so that I know what I'm doing and I know how to get to my answer choices. Oh, look right here, amid such exotica. That was one of my my questions here in number 33. So be vigilant. Keep your eyes moving across the text. Move faster. Answer questions more accurately. All right. And then, of course, I'm going to go back for my fourth passage, which is actually going to be my third passage, Humanities. By this time, I've only got about 5 to 3 minutes left. So I'm going to quickly skim the first couple of lines in each paragraph, which will help me perhaps get some meaning. Go in here and here. Quickly look at my questions. All right. The main purpose of this passage. Let's see, I could probably answer that pretty quickly, 22. And then let's say after 24, I run out of time. I'm done. The proctor says, it's now time to put your pencils down. Then what I do is I go into my answer sheet and I mark, I'm a C guesser, so I'm going to go H, C, H, C, H, C, H, right down my Scantron. And hopefully, because I kept the same letter throughout my guessing, I will get a few questions correct. If you jump around and you Christmas tree and you go A, F, B, G, C, and then J, you are less likely to get a few correct there. So it's best when you're guessing to stick with the same letter all the way down your Scantron. All right, so now I encourage all of you to start this strategy and start practicing this ACT test every single day until it's time to take your test. So you can see you have 35 minutes. You're going to give yourself enough time to read accurately and make sure you answer enough questions to get that 50%. I suggest using a stopwatch to help yourself keep time. Give yourself 11 to 13 minutes per passage, between 10, 11, and 13 minutes per passage, and that will help you to be more accurate on the first 3. And remember, you need to shoot for 55 to 60%. That means you're in the safe zone of that concordant score of a 19. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me at Kathleen Jasper at edgeacademics.com, or you can hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or any other social media that we're a part of. Have a great day.